right now. Hi, I'm Alicia, and welcome to my Operational Innovations channel, where I focus on process tips, techniques, and strategies to help you level up in the area of project management, product ownership, and small business operations. Today's topic, the Small Business Health Check. From my top 10 tips list, number 8, barter like a boss. In addition to my video on this, I'm bringing you other perspectives on the topic to help support you. Today, we're here with Dana Bath, my financial advisor and sister-in-law, coming to you live from Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the channel, Dana. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! I'm so glad you're here. I know this is a topic that a lot of people don't really understand, this concept of bartering. And when I put my top 10 tips list together, you immediately came to mind because you barter so much like a boss, like nobody I know. So I thought, well, who else to talk to about this other than you? So tell us a little bit about your business, Dana.
So I do financial planning and investment advising. I work with about 47 clients, and I have been doing that for probably close to 25 years. Sounds
Wow.
crazy to me
Yeah.
a bit when I say that. And I really just pretty much do whatever I can to help clients financially. I start with a basis of planning, and then from there we go into looking at the investments, and then we strategize to figure out how to meet all the goals that have been outlined during the process.
Okay. And so what do you think about this concept of bartering? How does that come into the work that you do?
Well, I think the reason that it comes into play for me and has quite often is because my way of helping people is to kind of jump into anything that they're doing financially. And oftentimes I don't want to impact them negatively by them hiring me to help them when they really need the help. And so it ends up turning into a situation where we have a conversation about, well, what do you do and what do I do type of thing. And so it just turns into, well, you have a need that could meet needs that I have, and or rather, you have a skill that would meet a need that I have. And
Yeah.
so one of the coolest areas where I did it was to get my house in order. What I mean by that is I had a lot of things that needed to be updated and redone, and walls that needed popcorn scraped off of them, all kinds of stuff. And ended up talking to a contractor who was too expensive, honestly, for me. So it kind of started in the space of, I can't afford you, not you can't afford me. Anyway, long story short is he needed all kinds of back office support from a financial standpoint. So he needed to get insurance in order for workers' comp. He needed some invoicing. He needed bookkeeping. He just needed a ton of different things that were easily inside of my skill sets. And so we decided to trade, and it's been fabulous.
That's awesome. And I think that's such a great story. And what I want to double click on is you had a need and you recognized the skill set that you needed, and you just started having the conversation about it. I think part of what challenges people about this is they don't know how to start the conversation, or they don't know how to approach this conversation about bartering. What would you say about starting that conversation about bartering?
Well, one of the easiest spaces for me when I also do a trading kind of story, and I currently am in the trade, is my bookkeeper. So I can do the books myself, obviously, but I don't want to spend the time doing it, right? And I honestly should focus on the things that are important for me to be doing, which is financial planning. And in these current marketing conditions, investments, right? So,
Yeah.
needless to say, I just simply said to her, well, actually, it started off with I was paying her as a bookkeeper. And then she came to me and said that she wanted to sit down and do financial planning. And she thought, I need to start getting that in order in my own life. And I said to her, literally, well, how do you feel about doing it on trade? And she was like, that's fabulous. Like, she loved the idea because
Yeah.
we both are giving each other a wonderful service that we both really, really need. And we're not exchanging any money, which works for me. Originally I was exchanging the money, but it worked. And really in the situation with the contractor that I was talking about, that conversation kind of fell out of being dishonest with each other, right? I'm just going to
Mm,
say, I can't afford you. And in his mind, he went, well, I hear you talking about what you do. So maybe there's a way we can do this and we can work together. And
yeah.
that's really where I think you have to get to. I think oftentimes people just don't hire somebody, or they don't use the service, or they don't do it because they realize they can't afford it, and they don't tell the people, I can't afford you.
Yeah.
So the conversation to start thinking about other ways to still get this done then never happens, because you just don't respond. Like they show you something, they give you an invoice, right? Or an estimate rather. And you look at the estimate and you go, I can't afford that. And you just never respond. You just never say. Or you just say, oh, I've decided to go with somebody else. Well, how about you say, is there any way we could maybe make this work differently? And you see what comes out of that conversation. And that's really how it starts, in my opinion, is you be honest with who you're dealing with. And then all of a sudden you're having a back and forth conversation and you realize, well, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I
Yeah.
mean, it just kind of turns into that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're just having an honest conversation. You're collaborating. You're listening to, what each other has and what each other brings to the table, and you think of creative solutions about how you can both get what you're looking for. I think that's great, and I think that barter and trade and all of that is just really underutilized or underappreciated or underrecognized, or maybe people have some weird feeling about it. I don't know, but there's a book called The Soul of Money, and she has a whole section in that book where she talks about, it's by Lynn Twist, and I'll put the link to it below. She talks about a whole culture that doesn't even deal in paper money. That all of the work that they do and their whole society is around trade. So I think there's something we can
Awesome.
learn from that.
Well,
Yeah.
and the one other thing that I would just add is that I think once you open that door in that first relationship, then every next relationship, you're thinking about it. You're trying to figure out, well, maybe there's a way I could trade this out,
Right.
because I've done it a ton since that first relationship. And I've actually even had other people that I know or friends of mine who've done the same thing in the same way, right?
Huh.
But you've got to be open to it. And this particular contractor and my bookkeeper and a guy that actually, funny enough, built my deck, he did it on trade. I just remembered saying to him, actually, he was talking, he just happened to be talking, and it all comes out of just kind of having a casual conversation with somebody, right? If you're willing to chat with somebody, people will start telling you about their story. They'll start telling you about what's going on in their lives. And as you listen to them talk about that, you start to see where those opportunities can just open up. So in his situation, he needed business cards. He was trying to build his business. He was trying to find more ways to get clients. And I call everybody a client, just so you know, because in his situation, might not exactly be a client. But anyway, he needed these things and he didn't have the skill set. And granted, my skill set obviously is financial planning, but I know how to get business cards done. I know how to make flyers. And so I said to him, well, how about we do this? How about you, from a labor standpoint, your labor, which is really what I'm doing, is labor is traded. And so I bought the products to build the deck, right? I brought the wood, I bought the tracks, blah, blah. But the labor is where your cost oftentimes can get really outrageous. But if you're
Yeah.
trading hours, right? Takes me
Yeah.
3 hours to figure this out, and it takes you 3 hours to, put some of the nails and the screws into the planks that you bought. It's a great trading opportunity.
Huh. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're really listening for the need. I mean, when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're really listening for the need. They have a
Yes,
need, you have a need, you have a skill set. But what I'm also hearing you say is that you've kind of expanded beyond. I mean, you're a financial planner. Your role is not, like you said, with business cards and this, that, and the other, but you have a skill and you can be of service. So what's the way
absolutely.
that people can be of service, and how can you uh, trade out, skills or services to help
And if
another
you
person, and you can get help too.
And if you think about it, everybody needs a secretary.
Yeah.
So, if
You know?
somebody says, if you can say to them, well, I can figure that out for you, or I will figure it out, and you have some skills naturally to be like a good researcher or a good finder of information. That's just naturally your skill set. Everybody outside of you needs some level of that type of service, and
Yeah.
they don't take the time to do it, right? So a carpenter, how much time does he spend in figuring out how to make business cards? His skill set's very specific.
That's very true. You know, and actually my top 10 list is about the business side of the business,
Hmm.
because people go into business because they love the craft or the thing. This is a great
Yeah,
example. The carpenter loves carpentry. The carpenter loves wood. The carpenter doesn't love bookkeeping. And
right,
so what happens is all that whole part of his business that needs to be done isn't getting done. And so
right.
the business isn't doing what you want it to do. So this is partly why I started this top 10 tip series. I mean, these are things I learned
Yeah.
when I went into business. And since I'm in my third time around, these are things that I'm sharing with others. So I love these points. I love expanding the options, listening for the need. Any other tips you can think of that you would give to people who want to barter like a boss?
Um, I think that the biggest one is don't be afraid to ask, right?
Mm,
Don't be afraid to put it out there. Um, the other thing I would start with for yourself personally is what kinds of things do you have as skills that somebody else might like, so or might need or might want, because then again you have something to start opening up that conversation with anyway. If you figure out what things could I do for somebody else that they would actually really need or want in general. You
yeah,
know, if you were, let's say you were a seamstress, right? And you end up, well, again, you're working with a carpenter, right? And he's ripped his clothes on numerous nails and, you know, various stuff, and he's been replacing them because he didn't have a way to fix them. Well, you
yeah,
say, you know what? You know, bring all of your needed sewing to me, and I will do it for
yeah,
your service of fixing my cabinets, you know, because you just, but you got to figure out what are my skills and then
yeah,
go from there.
yeah. I don't actually think I knew that you bartered your deck. I
Yeah,
didn't know you did that one. So you did the basement for sure, and
yeah,
the room that you're sitting in is part of this whole barter story.
yes.
That's
And yes,
awesome.
and the deck. It ended up being the deck. And funny enough, my fireplace in my upstairs was bartered as
Yeah,
well with the same guy that did the deck.
that's awesome.
My whole
That's
house
awesome.
has been redone on barter.
I think that's awesome. And see, that, again, people don't realize the options and the possibilities that are available through barter. And to your point, don't be afraid to ask. You know, think about your own skills and a skills inventory, if you will, so that way you come to the table and value what you have to offer. Because if the other person can't do it, it's a value to them. Kind of like you said with sewing or whatever the thing is, it's a value. What's another tip you can think of?
Um, hmm. I I mean, if okay, so just figure out your skills. Don't be afraid to ask. And I don't know, because once you figure out those two things, I mean,
Yeah,
you get into that conversation. I'm not sure what else you would need to do other than structure how you're going to uh, track or keep track of the relationship, I guess.
right.
Meaning, you don't want to get to a situation where you're spending 10 hours doing whatever you do, and this dude only took 3 hours to do whatever he did for you, you know,
Yeah,
person. So you probably
yeah,
want to have some sense of how that would kind of work. So you know, need to be clear because myself as a person, my billable rate is much more significant than a laborer putting up drywall,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you need to figure out how that works. And he worked inside of those parameters too. So
yeah.
he knew that I could be billed at, let's just say hypothetically, $150 an hour, whereas his billable hour rate is $25. You know,
$25 an hour. Yeah.
so you have to come up with some framework so that you don't feel like you're being taken advantage of on either side, to be honest.
Yeah.
You don't want them to feel that way, and you don't want to feel taken advantage of either. So you really have to be comfortable with giving your time, right? Because it's time, and you have to be. I think I would say willing to know that it's not going to be a perfect science either.
That's a great point. And actually, I'm smiling because that was my next question I was going to ask you is about structure. You know, how might you structure this bartering agreement? You can use I mean, I don't think it has to be full contractual, but maybe just something like a memo of understanding or some sort of way that you structure and track whatever the agreement is so that you both feel like you have a clear understanding of what to expect.
So, and I think in the way that I did it, because of my, what I figured my hourly rate is, I would then track my hours,
Hmm.
come up with a dollar amount that then would address or take care of what would have been the original invoice.
Oh, I
So
see.
if the labor cost was, $5,000 and I was billing him out on my time at $150 an hour, then when I got to the number of hours that satisfied that bill, then he would just have to straight up pay me if he wanted to continue to use my services.
I see. Love it.
Yeah.
That's a great structure. I think that's a really important part of this because, you know, people think that because it's barter, it's just kind of loosey-goosey. And I think that there's an important part of keeping it structured, a little lightweight structure that everybody gets what they need. And I love the example that you gave because you just looked at the dollar figure, looked at your billable rate and did the equivalent amount of work and then structured that in a way to where you could be happy, he could be happy.
Yes. And that's the same thing with my bookkeeper. My planning fee is a set dollar amount, and her hourly rate is a set dollar amount. Well, my planning fee comes all at once, and she bills monthly.
Yeah.
So, but it was fine because at the end of the day, the number of hours that she spends, a month and for 1 year actually just happened to work out perfectly with what my planning fee was. So
That's
it was an
great.
easy one to just go, here you go, right?
I love that. I think it's so smart. It's such a smart, savvy way to operate. And I really want to thank you for your tips and for sharing your experiences and sharing your examples. I really appreciate it. So that's it, folks. Tips from Dana, who barters like a boss. What resonates for you? What tips do you have? Share your input, share your insights and tips that you might do when you barter like a boss. You can share that below in the comments. We're all in this together and we can all use the help that we can get. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for the next drill down video in my series, my top 10 tips for small business operators. The next one coming up, number 9, give something away. If you like this video, I invite you to like and subscribe and hit the notify button, and I'll see you next time.